Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that are new around here, I'm Sam and I create tip videos and tutorials to help you improve your art. This week I'm going to be talking about fur and the different techniques that you can use to make the fur look as realistic as possible. I've tried lots of methods over the years, some have been successful, not so much, but it's all about learning and I really want to share that knowledge with you today. So I have 5 really helpful tips on how to improve your realistic fur drawing in colour pencils. And let's get into the video. So the first tip is to work in layers, and it's really important because you don't want the fur to look completely flat. You don't want to just apply one layer of fur because that's not how fur is in real life. If you brush through a coat of fur, you can see that there's lots and lots of different layers, just like our hair. You know, it's not made up of one layer, it's made up of many layers, and that's what's going to give it the depth and the realism, because the fur doesn't tend to lie flat, it tends to lie in different directions. You get these little kind of flyaways that go in odd directions, and that's what's going to give it that realistic look. The next tip number 2, is to follow the direction of the fur. You'll see on a cat or a dog's nose, for example, that the fur will tend to fan out like a clock around the nose. So it goes off in completely different directions and then it will gradually merge with the fur of the rest of the face. So it's really important that you follow your reference photo and map out the direction that the fur's going. If you tend to imagine the way that the fur's going and not really look closely at the reference photo, it's not going to look realistic at all because it's not how the fur lies. So it's important to really look and observe and follow what you can see, not what you imagine fur is going to be doing. You'll also find that fur changes directions quite quickly. You'll find around the eye area of a cat or most animals, the fur will tend to go up and then it will tend to curve round, and that's quite a difficult area to work on because it's difficult to map out. It's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, but once you get that right and you really just look at your reference photo and follow the direction of the fur, and you'll see that that will look a lot more realistic. The next tip number 3, is to work in clumps. So it's not possible to draw every single individual hair exactly the way it is in the reference photo. It's just not possible, and actually, you know, you'll get bored after about an hour. So it's important to work in clumps. You can see with my hair, it tends to form curls and stick together in a form, and you'll find that with straight hair, wavy hair, wiry hair, it will tend to form clumps of fur. It's important to look at the shape of the fur, not how you imagine again. So it's really that power of observation. So don't imagine that you're drawing fur, just look at the shadows, at the highlights, the shapes that the fur creates, and you'll find that to begin with it will look a little bit messy and you'll think this is really not coming together. And as you build up the layers and build up the colours and build up that shape of the fur, all of a sudden it starts to come together, and it's quite amazing to see. So persevere, take your time, lots of patience, and you will get there. The next tip number 4, is to use lots of colours. So you'll notice in the reference photo that fur isn't just one colour. So say for example black, you tend to just go straight in with the black colour pencil and it will start looking flat and you won't create that depth of fur and texture. So what I tend to do is I start with all of the greys. So you've got, in the Faber-Castell polychromos, you've got cold greys and warm greys, and then you've got other ones like the Payne's grey. So what I'll do is I'll look at the, say for example the black fur, and I'll notice whether it's cold or warm tone. And the cold tone is kind of more blues and purples, and you'll notice especially in the shine of the fur that there may be a hint of blue there. So that would be the cold. And if it's a warmer tone, you'll see hints of reds and brown. So if it's a cold tone, I'll go in with the cold greys, obviously. So there's 1 to 6, and I'll start with number 1 and work all the way up to number 6. I'll go in with very light layers and gradually build it up, and then you'll get the depth of colour. You also go in with a few blues, maybe some purples. You've got to be brave. You've really got to look at the reference photo and see which colours are there. And sometimes within the cold greys, I will put a layer of blue or a layer of purple. Again, just looking to see where those are. Generally, they're around the edges of a shine, and it really brings that colour to life. It creates that lovely depth of black. It's not completely flat, which is what you're looking for. If it's the warmer greys, then you'll tend to look at the shines again, and you'll see that when the light catches, you'll tend to see a hint of red or brown or orange perhaps, and you just add those layers into your drawing and the fur will really come to life. The fifth point, and one that is very important, especially when you're finishing your drawing, is to not make the fur too uniform. It just doesn't work. It doesn't lie flat. You'll tend to find in the reference photo they might be outside, there might be some wind blowing, and it's really important that you add those flyaway hairs and the hairs that are just not fitting in with anything else. And that's what makes it look more realistic. So there's ways of doing this. You can use a craft knife and just scrape up some of the colour pencil to add those fine highlights. You can add some white over the dark, and the Caran d'Ache Illuminants are really great for that. Usually any wax-based pencils tends to be a little bit more opaque and it will show up over the darker furs. You can also use your kneaded eraser and just pull up some highlights very, very gently, and you can even use some white gouache. The other thing to watch out for is hairs that completely overlap, and that's much more apparent in curly fur. So you tend to find that the curls will lie on top, go underneath, and that's when point number 3 comes into place, because you want to be looking at the shapes that the fur create and not trying to imagine drawing a curl, because that's how I started. And I really, I looked at, say, a Cocker Spaniel's ear and it was really curly, and I thought, right, I need to draw a curly ear, and it just ended up looking really stringy, a bit like spaghetti. It did not work at all. And when I kind of took my brain away from the fact that I was drawing curly fur and just to draw what I could see, that's when things started to really change for me. I really hope you enjoyed today's video and got some helpful hints on how to draw realistic looking fur. If you have any other questions, please leave those in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with your friends. And also don't forget that bell icon just to make sure that you're notified of future videos and that you don't miss them. I look forward to seeing you next time, and just keep practicing.